While the Obama administration has refused to even consider prosecuting any Bush administration officials who approved waterboarding, a civil action, as Jeremy said, is now underway against former Secretary of Rumsfeld for the alleged unjust imprisonment of and torture of an American translator in Iraq. While the veteran's name has been withheld, the Huffington Post reports that he worked as a translator in Anbar province starting in December 2004 until he was taken and held at Camp Cropper near Baghdad for 9 months. He thought he was on his way home. Court papers say the translator was repeatedly abused, then released without explanation or justification in August 2006. The Justice Department insists he was told he was suspected of passing information to the enemy and helping anti-coalition forces infiltrate Iraq from Syria. The translator insists he denied all wrongdoing and answered all questions truthfully. He also says he was choked, exposed to extreme cold and continuous artificial light, blindfolded, hooded, slammed into a door or window, and subjected to music at excruciating volume when he tried to sleep. Though the Obama administration, which is providing representation for Rumsfeld, insists he couldn't be sued personally for official conduct, the U.S. District Judge James Gwinn disagrees. Judge Gwinn has now ruled the translator could sue Rumsfeld for damages, writing in his ruling, quote, "The court finds no convincing reason that United States citizens in Iraq should or must lose previously due process protections during prolonged detention in a conflict zone abroad. One purpose of the constitutional limitations on interrogation techniques and conditions of confinement is to strike a balance between government objectives and individual rights, even when the stakes are high." Mike Kanovitz is the attorney for the translator, the plaintiff in this case, and he joins me now from Chicago. Thank you for your time, sir.
Good evening. How you doing?
You said your client was preparing to come home when he was abducted by our own forces and then held in secret. Did the family ever find out what happened to him? Was he ever charged?
Well, he was never been charged with anything that the government officials are willing to explain to him. The way the system was set up back at that time in Iraq is citizens could be held under a category that was not enemy combatant. It was called a security internee. And essentially what the quote-unquote charges were was that he is suspected of potentially being affiliated with persons who may possibly represent a threat to multinational forces, Iraq, and then the supposed factual basis for it is classified, so you're never told. What I can tell you is he certainly didn't do anything wrong, and at the time that he was trying to leave, he had helped the United States develop a lot of contacts that they wanted to keep secret at that point in time, and he was obviously going to leave up to his obligation not to disclose that, but they have unchecked authority, and they had the ability to imprison him until they were ready for that information to come out. And essentially, the thing that they call a hearing that he had when they first took him into custody was short, non-informative. 9 months later, he had another hearing, which was also non-informative. And then a week after he was exonerated, the United States first acknowledged its ties with some of the contacts that he had developed for the United States when he was a translator in Iraq. So essentially, he was put on ice.
Do you have evidence that while he was put on ice that he was abused, and we'd be able to introduce evidence in court to that effect?
Yeah, absolutely. We have his own testimony. We have the testimony of other Americans who were held in Cropper as well, who went through similar types of torture tactics. And then we have a legacy of facts that show that these are the exact type of tactics that Mr. Rumsfeld approved, first for use at Guantanamo and then later to Gitmoize the U.S. operations in Iraq. So you've got direct evidence, you've got corroborative direct evidence, and you've got the circumstantial evidence that these are the exact sort of tactics that were authorized.
Rumsfeld is being sued in a similar case by two contractors who said they were also held in this same place and also tortured in this same place, this Camp Cropper. Does that case have any bearing on yours?
Yeah, well, as you know, I represent those two men as well. And that case was filed in the United States District Court in Chicago. And the judge that was handling that case at the trial court level also ruled that under circumstances like this, a court can hear constitutional claims against an official of Rumsfeld's position and eventually allow a jury to decide, what justice is between those people. And so now we have a federal judge in Chicago and a federal judge in Washington, D.C., both saying the same thing. The Chicago case is now on appeal Mr. Rumsfeld took it to the United States Court of Appeals for the Seventh Circuit, and a decision is probably coming soon.
All right, so the Supreme Court has ruled that high-ranking government officials can be sued, but they can only be sued if they can be tied directly to a violation of constitutional rights, with the caveat that they knew that what they were doing at the time would contribute to that. Rumsfeld insists to this day, we heard the clip that's from this spring, that enhanced interrogation, as they call it, is not torture. Do you have to prove in this case that he knew that what he was doing was wrong or was torture? I mean, even if you can prove that the abuse was as your client describes?
Well, I have to prove that he authorized the tactics that were used. And there's already a fairly darn clear record of that. I mean, the Senate Armed Services Committee documents Mr. Rumsfeld's approval of these tactics. There's James Schlesinger's report informing him unequivocally that these tactics were being used in Iraq. So there's a clear record that he authorized what was going on and that he knew what was going on. Whether he wants to quibble and say that that's not torture, the question that a jury's ultimately going to be asked to decide, whatever label you want to slap on it, is that unconstitutional when it comes to an American citizen? And that is what we'll have to prove, and I feel very confident we'll be able to prove it.
And lastly, Mr. Kanovitz, what do you want out of that jury if they find for your defendant? Do you want damages, or what do you want?
Well, in a civil suit, and unfortunately, private citizens don't have the ability to initiate any other kind of judicial proceeding. They can't prosecute, they can't bring criminal charges, and the system either brings criminal charges or it doesn't. So civil lawsuits are all that are available to private citizens, and in civil lawsuits, the only damages a court can award are money damages, and so he will ask a jury to decide what justice is between him and Mr. Rumsfeld.
Mike Kanovitz, the attorney for the unnamed plaintiff in this suit against Donald Rumsfeld, our greatest thanks. Good luck with the case.
Thank you very much.
Thank goodness.